Coming to you live from the Northern Ireland International Food Festival, it's this week's Apocalypse. I am your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Ferris. John,
hey.
How are we doing today? Very keen this morning. Yes.
Well, just had to get in there quickly. You know, we need to keep quiet here.
Yeah. We're sort of currently ensconced in sort of the upside down remnants of the German beer tent. We're pretty well hidden, so it was quite a nice morning. I had myself a nice sort of chicken katsu burger and some kind of weird iced coffee, which I've still got here. It's going down a treat that I got from the Japanese food stand earlier, and then all hell broke loose. So we hid in here. There was lots of screaming and shouting and eating of people, it sounds like, out there.
Which I don't think is meant to be part of this festival.
No. It wasn't on any of the menus that I could see. No, everything was pretty chill right up until about 15 minutes ago. So we're pretty well hidden right now. They had a little sort of inflatable outdoor cinema over there, and so we grabbed a couple of the reels from that. And luckily, amongst those, it seems to me that there was a few pretty handy educational videos to get us out of our current scenario, because I don't have a clue what to do. John, have you got any plans currently?
Well, no. I'm just vaguely aware of zombies or infected.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I've seen a lot of, zombies from, English-speaking countries, mainly America.
Yeah, what if they're different?
I know, and I'm like, what are zombies like in other places in the world? Would be my concern, and now they're here, they're in our place, and they're. I guess you know what, it's more. I want to understand them more than anything. You know what? That's what this festival was all about. It was about people coming together and sharing their cultures. So we have a few films that might help us share in the zombies, the cultures of their home countries. So we have from 2007. We have a little double barreler on directors here. Jaume Balagueró and Paco Plaza's Wreck. Then from 2020 we have...
That's Spanish?
Yes.
That's Spanish.
Is that Spanish? Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say that you knew the word wreck. Oh. That's Spanish for record, is it, John?
Yep. Wreck is actually Spanish for record.
It is. Oh, yes. You're so learned.
Yep.
Then from 2020, we have Il Cho's #Alive, which is a Korean film.
That's right.
Yeah. South Korean, we should say. It's not from that. No, we don't get a lot of films come out of North Korea that get an international sort of release.
No.
No.
Maybe for the best.
Yeah. Do What You're Told, I believe, is the number one in the box office there right now.
Or you'll become a zombie.
Oh, it's almost not funny. And then also, finally, we have from 2017, we have Shin'ichirô Ueda's One Cut of the Dead, which is a Japanese film.
Yeah.
So let's line up this projector and have a wee squiz. Alright, so we're going to start off then with Jaume Balagueró and Paco Plaza's Wreck. A little double act of directors here. All in Spanish. Now, John, how do you feel? How did you think? What did you learn? And did you like Wreck?
I honestly think that Wreck is, if not the best, it's definitely one of the better found footage movies that at least I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, like all zombie movies, there are some cliches and parts of it are predictable and things like that, but I think overall it does a very, very good job. It, I mean, from even the concept of it being this documentary on firemen, it works quite well, and the start of it's quite slow and boring. Intentionally, to know that you can see the host lady, I forget her name. She's just
Angela.
Angela, yes, that's it.
I think is how they pronounce it.
She's just kind of sitting bored, hoping that they get a call out.
Yeah, it's a little bit sort of ghoulish almost on her part, because she's there to make a documentary and they're just they're firemen on the job.
Yeah.
And she's she's only there for the one night for like her news show. I think it's called they translate it as While You're Sleeping or While You're Asleep is the name of the show that she's doing. So it seems to be like a thing that she does regularly with like emergency services and stuff like that. And she's obviously like, she works for some like news network, and she's hoping for something exciting to happen, which when it's emergency services, it's never a good thing when that happens. But she's got her fingers crossed. But you can see whenever she brings that up with the firemen, they're kind of like, maybe we don't hope that happens. But I guess it would be good for your show.
Actually, it was my wife who pointed it out when we were watching it. Was that the firemen, in it are the same kind of. It's almost like a genuine performance. I don't know if the actors were just very good, or that they had actual firemen for the not so much for the some of them do have a bit more of a pronounced role later on, but for the ones in the station, they seem to be given fairly genuine performances of like, we kind of don't want that to happen, or like kind of going through what they do on these slow nights. Like the fire chief primarily is the guy who's sort of taking them around, and he seems the actors do a really great job of being like, I'm not comfortable on camera, especially I think one of our main firefighters, Manu is his name, the bald one. The tall sort of skinhead guy. I don't want to say that he's part of a skinhead organization, but that's just, he has no hair. He's a hairless gentleman. Well, you've said it now.
And he's definitely he's a skinhead fireman who helps people. Him especially, I really like his performance, because he is genuinely just like, he's always like looking around to the camera and people behind. He looks directly into the camera a few times, and he looks like looking like he's looking for reassurance that he's doing the right thing.
He's kind of not comfortable with it on him, and it is very good that way. And I also like that. I think they do a really good job with Angela's character as well, because she kind of seems like a nice person and quite genuine, and later on she's like actively helping people. But I could never escape once you realise that she is the host for this documentary, and she knows this is rolling, and on many times she's saying to the cameraman, keep recording in these like really awful scenes. So part of it is kind of like, she knows she's on camera, so she playing this up. And there's other instances where you see she is quite opportunistic, and she's quite clearly thinking of her career when everything does go down later on. Like, she is trying to, this is a bigger story than she could have hoped for.
She's like, this is a great opportunity for me as a reporter to be like the person with this story, and I'll be remembered for this, and we need to film everything. I think she says that to Pablo, the cameraman. She says, keep rolling, we need to film everything. But I like that plays, I think at the very end they have that recording of her saying that. Plays over the blackness at the end of the film.
Yes, that's right. It's very well.
Yeah, so you're right. They're doing that on purpose.
But I like the ambiguity with the character, to know that you could take it at face value. Like, she does help people and things like that, and she seems fairly concerned, but she's the only one truly who has any experience with a camera being focused on them, and she is quite aware. But overall, I think most of the characters are. I can't think of one that's really terrible at all.
No,
but,
I would tend to agree with you. I think I agree with your statement that this is probably the best found footage film.
Yeah.
And I've seen a hell of a lot of them. I've seen a lot of found footage films, and most of them are bad.
I think a lot of them fall down on the whole concept of why is this, like, why are these people recording this?
Yeah, why does this person have a camera? The movie that I found most egregious with that was Cloverfield. It is the worst example. It was kind of a fun film to watch, but it is the worst example of why, in the name of all that is holy, would this person still be holding this camera at this point? It makes no sense. They do not justify it. There's even a point in Cloverfield where the camera gets dropped, which is a thing that's common in this movie. It happens in this movie, but it happens And the reason the person goes back for it is extremely valid.
Yeah.
Because they need the night vision on it to see what the hell is happening in the dark. Now, in Cloverfield, the person just goes back for the camera because who knows why. They don't justify it. I think Cloverfield is probably J.J. Abrams' worst film. I think it's the film that made him like famous. Sort of, it was like his big success. But I think I like it, but the behavior of the characters in it makes no sense. I think in this film, everyone's motivation is very clear and makes perfect sense. It's exactly what you're saying about like Angela wants the story. Yeah. And Pablo, the cameraman, is doing what he's told because he doesn't know what else to do. He's following her around and he's just like in that mode of I'm the cameraman, I'm going to shoot this. And everyone else has their own, like the firemen are there to help people.
Yeah.
They're there to help this old woman who's apparently like been trapped in her apartment, or like they think something's up with her and they want to get into the apartment to see if she's all right or she's dead or whatever, and then oh no, of course everything goes horribly wrong. So that makes sense. All the other people just live in the building and they're not allowed back into their flats.
Yeah.
And of course they're all just trying to survive and not get killed, and you know that doesn't go well either because that's the kind of movie this is. And it's also good in that I like the camera work in it because it feels very real.
Yeah.
And it's also, there's a lot of found footage movies where you're watching it and you're kind of like, I'm starting to feel a bit ill looking at this. And that didn't really
would say there are parts
film.
of this that are like that, but just what you're saying is it makes sense for what's happening. There are moments where it's just complete chaos, and it makes sense that the cameraman's not going to be sitting there with a steady hand focusing on something. But I would only mention that because I know a few people who they really get motion sick from found footage movies in particular, and you know it's something to be aware of. And in fact, my wife's one of them, but she actually enjoyed this movie despite it. She had to kind of maybe look away at a few scenes, you know, because of the crazy camera work. But overall, it still feels genuine. It still does. It kind of keeps you in the movie that when it's happening, and it doesn't detract from it.
Because you're like, I want to concentrate now and see what's happening.
Yeah,
I want to know what's going on. And the parts where the camera work is good make sense because this guy is a professional cameraman.
Exactly. Which again is another problem with found footage movies. Is it's usually someone doing like a home video and, hey everyone, they did.
But then I think they suffer from the fact that oftentimes the person holding the camera in reality who's doing the camera work is genuinely a professional cameraman. And then you're like, okay, this was not shot by somebody who didn't know what they were doing. And then is deliberately trying to look like they're don't know what they're doing, which is what leads to those like, oh, this is horrible and I can't look at it. Yeah, so I think the aspect of the way it's shot is great. Mm-hmm. They justify that really well, which they don't do in a lot of found footage movies. I mean, all those Paranormal Activity movies got to the point where you're just like, how do we gin up a reason why this house has cameras all over it? Yeah. Even by the second one, that was nonsense. Yeah. That was absolute nonsense in the second one. The first one, it kind of made sense because it was somebody literally trying to capture footage of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
And in the second one, it's not. In the second one, it's just, I just have cameras everywhere because I don't want to bother. They start, it's security or some crap. And it's like, you don't have security cameras in your hallway and your kitchen and your bedroom and your bathroom. Like, you just don't. That's not a real thing. I think the only one of those movies I think has any value is the first film. I kind of like the first Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, it's done quite well. It does have a few moments, just as we're saying, like, you know, the Mika, I think you call it the main male
guy
in it. There's a few times where it's like silly reasons for him to have the camera on and things like that, but it's forgivable. It's done. It's probably one of the better found footage movies as well.
Yeah. So it doesn't really have a lot of shaky cam in it as well because it's mostly static cameras that have been set up around it. Blair Witch Project, of course, everybody knows Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
It was one of the best examples of less is more, I think,
It
in
kind of
cinema.
started this whole thing, really, didn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a couple of other things before it that influenced it. Like, there's a film called The Last Broadcast, which is a pseudo documentary about the Jersey Devil. That I think the makers of the Blair Witch Project cited as an inspiration. Because there's parts of that where he's literally in the woods holding a camera and looking around, and you're like, ooh, you almost find yourself looking in the trees to see if you can see something, even though that's crazy. It's ridiculous, disproportionate success based on its budget was the reason why I think a lot of people suddenly started going like, well, I've got an 8mm camera and a camcorder, so I could do one of these, no problem, and spend no money. Like, the Blair Witch Project budget was in the thousands, I think, and they made millions upon millions. So that did definitely inspire this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Because then everyone with a camera was like, oh, I could make millions. It's like, no, you still have to make a decent movie.
Yeah, even to the point where people are like, oh, this is shot on the phone. And you're like, okay, that's really... Okay, I appreciate your ingenuity or whatever, but it's so unpleasant to look at most of the time. Oh, there is quite a good one like that called Lake Mungo. That I saw. I think it's Australian. I'm probably doing that thing again where I say Australian and it turns out it's New Zealand, so I'm sorry about that. But it was really, really good. I quite liked it. It is Australia. Okay, I'm alright. I'm okay. It was Australian. So it was okay, but for the most part, found footage films tend to be garbage.
Yeah.
They tend to be lazy and cheap and look at...
cheap in a lot of ways.
Yeah, cheap scars and cheap quite literally to make.
Yeah.
So I think this film you can see in fact the further influence of this film in later found footage movies.
Yeah.
Like the use of the night vision camera in this movie inspired umpteen million other films to do the same thing.
Like every good idea, it then gets aped and
like
just milked beyond.
Yeah, there was a film called The Tunnel, or The Tunnel Movie, I think is what it was called. It was a fully crowdfunded movie. It was pretty good. It was I think it was also Australian, I think. And it's actually okay. I'm just naming all the ones I can think of that are good, so I can give them credit. I don't want to name any other rubbish ones. But it was pretty good, but it suffered from... In it, there's a point where, the light on our camera broke, and they go to night vision, and because you've seen Wreck, you know that now the night vision camera's on, now is when you're going to see something scary. And I was spot on when I was watching that. I was like, oh, here we come. It's the monster. But I think in this film, like, rewatching it again, that particular scene, in fact, is still incredible.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the thing that makes, outside of like it, there are other found footage zombie movies, but this one's a particularly well made one. But you could say, oh well, yeah, it's just another one of those. I think the spoilers, I guess, for the end of this film, but the way they handle the ending, I think makes this film special. I think that's what makes this film really unique. Is like, there's a point in this film towards the end where, for me, the entire tone of the film completely changes naturally over the space of like 90 seconds to 2 minutes. There's this slow sort of reveal or realization that this is also about something else. That this isn't just, there's a zombie virus.
Yeah, because it's treated very, like, I mean, you have the whole building is quarantined because the authorities have realized there is something that, like, they know of this. It's contained within this building, and in fact, I haven't seen the sequels to this, but one of them does explain how they know about this. It started at a wedding.
That's the fourth one. People don't like that one. That did not.
I've heard.
I like the second one. I haven't seen the third one. And the one about the wedding in particular, I've heard was bad.
I've heard there's diminishing returns as far as So I suppose it's like any series. It just generally they run it into the ground.
There's very few horror sequels that outdo the original.
There's like a brief mention in this movie about the wedding. I think there's something along those lines to explain how it got into this building. But that essentially, it doesn't really matter. All you have to kind of know is, yes, they've been quarantined a lot, because a lot of this movie is them trying to just get out of the building and things becoming increasingly more chaotic. And I think without there's even a scene where they're interviewing, because they have nothing else to do really. They're interviewing the residents, and again, it's a good wee moment for like revealing more of these characters and some things that will tie in quite heavily into the plot and into the things that are going to happen and the reasons why. But overall, it's just done pretty well. It's just things make sense for the most part. There is a few conveniences, which there will always be, but
but it's mostly really well handled. And yes, as I say, like that sort of reveal at the end about that it's not just a virus. There's all this stuff about exorcisms and demonic possession and all that stuff that is revealed very cleverly, and like you can see Angela like looking around and being like, "What the fuck is this?" Like she's just like, "What?" And then she plays that tape, which feels to me, even like the look of the recorder, it feels like Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead. They have the recording in Evil Dead 2 where they play the recording of the guy talking about the demonic possessions and the Kandarian demon and he had to chop up his wife. He had to kill his wife and bury her in the cellar.
Because this movie's made in 2007 and that recorder looks like it is from the 80s or early 90s.
It looks like it's from straight off the set of Evil Dead 2 is what it looks like to me. So it's that's the point where I think this movie really cemented itself with me of being one of the best zombie movies, because it did something that to me was new with that. Where it was like there's a whole other layer to this, which they totally just. There was a remake of this movie. There was an American remake, which I think if I was part of the American cinema going audience, I would be disgusted and offended by the attitude of the American film industry to me as a cinema goer. It's so just patronizing whenever they do a remake of a film from somewhere else and they change something, and you sort of look at that and you go, well, why did they change that? And I think in this movie, it's that they, even though it's a horror movie where people get murdered all over the place, it's like they somehow didn't want to offend the Christian right, so they changed the end of the movie to be about, oh well, wouldn't you know, it's about foreign terrorists, which is just like they're almost catering to the nasty racist Christian right with that stuff of, oh, terrorists did this, and we all know what kind of terrorists they're referring to when they do it, because they get into that in the movie Quarantine, which I would not recommend anybody watch, because it's a shot for shot remake of this movie but with awful dialogue, and it will give you motion sickness because it is really badly shot.
And it's been a while since I've seen Quarantine, and it was out literally like a year after Wreck came out, which kind of shows you how quickly it was just rushed out. They
cranked it out as quick as possible.
Yeah. But I remember even when I seen it, like, because the edits in Wreck are done quite well, where it's like the camera switching off or, things like that. There's a weird one of them rewinding.
Yeah, you see them going back and reviewing the footage. That is a little. That doesn't really happen.
Which doesn't make any sense. Which always bugs me.
It doesn't really happen again in the film.
But it should have, because at one point they go down to look for. They're checking mailboxes because they're looking for the. I think someone's room, whoever's in the Residents Association.
The keys. He's the guy who is the medical intern. He was in charge of he's in charge of the keys whenever the actual building supervisor's not there, so they want to find out where he lives. Yeah,
exactly. And instead of rewinding the tape, which they could have done in that instance as well, they decide to we'll walk past chained up
there's
zombie.
literally there's literally a point in that movie where the fireman goes around everybody who's gathered and tries to establish who lives in what flat and asks everybody, right, first floor, the one on the left, who lives there, who lives at the one next to that. They do that with everybody. So yeah, they could just look at the footage for that the way they did earlier, but yeah, you know, they don't.
But you know what? It's a stressful situation.
Yeah, we'll forgive them that. Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe they weren't thinking.
Yeah, I think this film is just so well made for what it is. It's the best example of the kind of film that it is. It's the best example of a found footage movie, and it's one of my favorite, I think, just in general, zombie movies. I think if I had to have a top, whatever, pull a number out of there, top 5 zombie movies, this is in my top 5 probably.
Why not 6?
Yeah, okay, my top 6. This should be awkward then. If it was in, I was trying to be nice.
My top 6.5 zombie movies.
It's somewhere in my top 5 probably. If I had to sit down and work that out, this is going to feature because it has that great slow build at the beginning where it establishes itself, and it's very.
It gives a lot of time to lets the movie breathe, and it just lets you get to know Angela and the cameraman even. You know, he doesn't say much. He is just generally there doing his job. He has about 2 or 3 lines in the whole film, but you whenever he says that stuff, you get, and mostly she's barking orders at him. And he's just being obedient for most of the time. And there's also that whole interesting dichotomy with the sole police officer. Once the kind of the police officer in charge gets bitten and he's incapacitated, the one who takes over seems very much like a rookie, and he's way over his head, and he really struggles to kind of. He goes about it completely the wrong way, and kind of with. Tries to rule with an iron fist, so to speak, and it doesn't go down well. And
he pulls his gun and is pointing his gun at people at one point to get them to calm down. And then the fireman's like, "Oh, hey, dude, no, don't do that." Yeah,
Mano pretty much is the peacekeeper, and he's really the one who should be in charge.
He's almost the hero of the film for the most part. Yeah. They're following him around and sticking close to him because he is this. He's this big, nice, huge guy who's he's kicking in doors and lifting people over things and smashing heads.
He seems very capable.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who knows what to do with his hammer. You know, he's got a sledgehammer at one point, and you're like, right, it's on now, and you know that. Yeah.
And even though it's a bit of a it depends how you look at it, but they do kind of explain away how everyone changes. At different times, you know, some people are affected, are bitten, and they turn pretty much within a couple of minutes, and others take hours. And in one case, it seems like a couple of days.
The wee girl, where she just suddenly goes at the right time when it's most dramatically appropriate.
But bit of a plot convenience, to be honest. But they do mention quite early in that the incubation period depends on the blood type. So it is it's one of those random wee things they put in. So it's like this is so we can make the wee girl turn exactly when we need her to.
There's other in the hands of a lesser filmmaker, they might not have thought to put that detail in, and we'd be sitting here now saying, "But why do they all just turn around?" But they do that. they throw in that little line to stop people like us going, "You just did that for the crack." Yeah. Whereas it does make it. It's a nice sort of. Excuse for them to go, all of a sudden this person did turn right when they were talking about she's only got tonsillitis, and that reveal whenever they start talking about how they knew the virus was in the building at all is like a dog at the vet, and then they're like, who's got a dog here? Whose dog's at the vet? And then they're like, is the dog's name Max? Because the wee girl was talking about her dog earlier. And then he was at the vet, and they're like, and then that's the point where the mother's like, no, she just has tonsillitis, and then all of a sudden the daughter just and that's that, and you're like,
it's because earlier their mother's being very annoyed that they wanted the Asian couple who live in the building want to go up to because
her dad's in bed.
I think it's it's the father. He's quite elderly and he's sick in bed, so she's instantly thinking, Oh no, he's the Subject Zero
Right.
kind of thing, and she's once it turns on her, she's a wee bit
And once
less.
everybody's looking at her like, maybe your household is the cause of this. Yeah, she
Yeah.
doesn't like that. Not a bit. And then we also have there's another guy who like says some like racist stuff about the Chinese, saying that it might be them in an interview when he doesn't realize that they're filming him. He thinks they're not doing it. As soon as like they're like, oh no, we're filming now, and he's like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say so? You're like, yeah, I got you, mate. Yeah. So they're trying to blame the foreigners, as they.
I would describe him as a bit of a dandy.
Oh, he was always a bit of a dandy. He's very well turned out. He's like, combing his hair and stuff. He's very concerned with his appearance and which is his good side. They even mentioned to him at one point, and then like he says about like, oh, that's not my good side, and then it cuts, and then he's sort of awkwardly standing with his face pointing the wrong way so they can get his good side. As it looks really awkward, but it's that was a nice wee moment for me. I thought that was quite funny when they did that.
It's those wee moments that I think make it, because for me especially, like, as much as I can appreciate a lot of different aspects of filmmaking, I think my overall thing, and actually this goes for almost any medium that I consume, like books or video games, like I first and foremost need good characters, or I think mainly need that. I mean, obviously depends what's produced, but I think if you get the characters right, you can tell whatever story you really want, and it can kind of go in any direction you really want, as long as they feel real, or
as long as you have like really well fleshed out characters or believable characters, and an internal logic to your story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to make sense in the real world, but as long as if you have a rule that you've invented for this movie, as long as you stick to it, and then your characters are really good to sort of keep that sort of hold that aloft.
And
then,
it
you're
unfortunately
grand.
in this genre of filmmaking, no matter what country you go to, they tend to kind of get a bit lazy with it. Zombie movies, I mean, not just zombie movies, but they tend to kind of gloss over the characters quite a lot. Not in all cases, of course, but just in general, or they make them, they dumb them down to kind of.
They make them stupid so that they do things that they would be like, that you could consider entertaining. Like, hi, I'm going to have this person go out on their own into this house that's clearly they're never going to get out of, obviously, so that we can have a few scares, and it's like just an excuse. It was
very prevalent in kind of those hammer horror, like just horror in general would have kind of stupid protagonists, and it's kind of got a bit better. I think it generally has, like with a lot of the kind of well-regarded horror movies that we would talk about or we'd see, generally don't suffer from that, and I think it has got better. But I still, it irks me. It just gets to me for some
it's up
reason.
and down. I mean, if you go all the way back, if you look at like Night of the Living Dead, has some very good characters in it.
Yes.
Like the main character in Night of the Living Dead is a good guy, who's just trying to survive. They fudge it a bit with the female lead in that, because she's like traumatized and doesn't really say a lot of stuff and is kind of a shrinking violet in that film. But then they also have the family that's been hiding in the basement in that movie, and they're all really good characters. They have like their daughter's been bitten, and like the mother is agitated with the father, who is sort of the character archetype of your jittery, nervous guy who's dangerous to everyone. But I think they do a good enough job with dialogue and stuff, and specifically Night of the Living Dead, where every character in that is kind of a believable and real character. And the stupid things that they do make sense for them. But a lot of like modern films, especially zombie films, you're just watching it going like, why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. Nobody would go out there like that and get eaten. That's stupid. But this film avoids that by having just really good characters and its own internal logic again. And that the turn at the end is, I think, executed expertly. I think the way they don't just suddenly throw it at you, they kind of put the character suddenly in the scenario where they're having to wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
But you're sort of right there with them, trying to wrap your head around it and going like, is that what's happening? And then we very quickly get to the point where you're like, oh yeah, this definitely is what's happening, because look at that.
Yeah.
Which is the bit that gets sort of has been taken off in a lot of other found footage movies, where we have the night vision camera goes on because he breaks the spotlight on the actual camera, and they're trapped in this apartment with a thing that you're looking at and you're like, that's not a zombie. That is not a zombie. That is something else, and possibly the greatest puppet I have ever seen. Now, we were talking about
good.
Audrey 2 in Little Shop of Horrors is a great puppet. This is an entirely different kind of puppet, and is horrifying to the point where I was genuinely shocked to discover that it was a puppet.
Yeah.
I thought
it's very well done, and it moves so creepily.
It moves like it's really alive, like to the point where you're looking at it and you're thinking, did they get a person who is that shape and put them in makeup?
And if so, what person is that shape?
Yeah, what person is that shape? And you're like, oh, it's a puppet. And then you're like, that's amazing. That somebody, again, and we were talking about this again in Little Shop of Horrors, how amazing puppetry can be, just so impressive. Like the way Audrey 2 talks is amazing.
Yeah.
The way this thing moves around like it's a real thing that is alive is excellent. It's a huge credit to whoever the hell is making that. I assume there's several people making that thing move.
Yeah,
but it looks incredible. It really looks incredible. It's frightening. And if you see any behind the scenes photos of it, in full light, it still looks terrifying.
And I would say that I watched I watched this with overdubs as well, and they're not great, but I would just to kind of reiterate what you said earlier of avoid quarantine.
Yeah.
If you want to watch a found footage zombie movie, watch Wreck with the overdubs. It definitely loses a little bit, but I think it's much better. You know, if you don't particularly like subtitles, or you have difficulty reading subtitles, maybe, you know, if you're dyslexic or something like that, you know, I would still go that route rather than watching Quarantine.
Yeah, don't watch Quarantine. There's no good reason to watch Quarantine. I would probably. I haven't seen the dub, so you're saying that the dub is not. It's not offensively bad or anything. It's functional.
It takes a while to get used to it.
Yeah.
It starts off kind of bad when they're in the fire station, and I was kind of going, I don't think I can get through this. But I stuck with it, and once kind of everything ramps up, you get used to it. I still prefer. I still prefer the subtitle version, and you get more of the actual actors' performances that way.
Yeah, I find that generally with films, it's like you get a lot more of the filmmaker's intent if you watch it with subtitles rather than, short of literally learning the language that the film is in and appreciating it as someone who speaks that language. I would go with subtitles over dubs usually. Yeah. I agree. It's what I'm trying to say. But if you can't do that, so the dub is all right in this.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely better because mainly just because I really like this movie, and just what you said earlier, just not to harp on about it, but they really do mess it up, and they rushed it out just to cash in on the success of this movie. When they made Quarantine, so I would really just recommend that people just go for the overdub. It's not that bad.
Yeah, and like I've really enjoyed like some of these guys' other films that they've made. I actually was surprised that I had already seen quite a few of them.
Yeah,
without realizing that it was the people who made Wreck. They've made a couple of American films before this that were all right. They made one called Darkness that has Anna Paquin in it. Famously Rogue from the X-Men movies. Yeah. Now, it's not a great movie, but much like this film, the last 10 minutes are great. The end of it is brilliant. Now, I think Wreck, for its runtime, is just a great film through and through. There's a film called Darkness that you should watch the whole thing, because the whole thing's sort of a slow burn, and then the end of it is actually really, really good. But it's got Anna Paquin in it, and she does that face that she does, and that's about all she's got, I'm afraid. But it's all right. It's not bad. And another one
Shots fired.
I know. Ooh, she's gonna come. Her fan base are gonna come get me. I think she's all right.
Along with all New Zealanders and Australians, I believe.
I know. Yeah,
you're racking up the enemies here.
They'll band together to come get me. And another one called Fragile that had what's her face, Ally McBeal lady in it. Callista Flockhart, which I thought was all right too. It's a horror movie set in a hospital, and I'm always a sucker for that kind of thing, because I just really like the atmosphere of an old abandoned hospital.
Yeah.
Ever since I played Silent Hill, I think I've been like, oh no, that's scary. There's just something really creepy. I mean, I've been in hospitals at night, say, like visiting people and stuff, and just been like walking down a corridor that's like mostly not lit, and then there's just a weird abandoned wheelchair just sitting there that just stirs something in me to this day. I just get nervous when I see that kind of thing. And so it was all right. The antagonist, bad guy, ghost, whatever you want to call it, in this Fragile movie is actually really, really, really creepy. Once again, much like the thing in this film that is really creepy, the thing in Fragile is really creepy as well. Yeah. But the one I would recommend if anyone wants to watch another film by these filmmakers is one called Sleep Tight. It's hard to say whether or not it's a horror film. You might say it's a psychological thriller more than that.
Yeah, they overlap quite often.
Yeah, it's a blurry line. It is. I'm gonna just say that it is kind of a horror movie. It's excellent. It's completely different. It's set in the same kind of location as this. It's set in a Spanish apartment complex. Yeah, very much like the one in this film. It centers on the sort of the building supervisor and what he gets up to. And it's brilliant. It's Mientras Duermes, which is actually the name of the show that Angela is presenting in this film, in Rec. So they named this film after her TV show. It means like I think they translate it in Rec as "while you're asleep." Yeah. Which I think maybe is what it is, or "as you sleep." The English title for this film though is Sleep Tight, which is just a perfect title for it. Don't want to say anything else about it because it's all about what you discover as you go along in that movie. But it is absolutely brilliant, and I love it. I really love it. It's so creepy. It's a very, very good film. So yeah, overall, I think Wreck is one of my favorite zombie movies. Full stop. I think. Yeah. It's probably, as you said earlier, it's probably the best found footage film ever made. Yeah. Now the competition for that isn't stiff because there's a lot of really, really bad ones and a couple of good ones. Yeah. But I think it's at the top. Blair Witch Project I like, but I think this is better. Yeah. This is more intense. Blair Witch Project was novel at the time, which I think gave it a lot of oomph with people. With me, I'd never seen a film quite like that when I saw the Blair Witch Project. The first Paranormal Activity film's all right. Mm-hmm. I quite enjoy it. And then there's that Lake Mungo film that I talked about earlier, which is actually also, it's a ridiculous title. It's a very Australian title, I'll say that. It's a very Australian title, calling something like Mango, you can imagine. But it's really good too. But outside of those, I think found footage is kind of just a big sort of disappointing genre in general. It is. I tend to avoid them now. Yeah, a lot of them are very samey, especially the ones about ghosts tend to be basically like every one of those TV shows about ghost investigations. You may as well be watching one of those when you're watching one of these found footage movies, and I don't like those very much at all. No. Okay, well, I think I just heard the crepe stand getting knocked over, and that was only 2 stalls down the line. So they may be triangulating on our position with us sitting here and talking loudly about movies. So we're going to move on now to our second film from 2020. Hashtag Alive is the title of this film. Directed by Il Cho. It's a Korean film, all Korean cast. John, what did you think of #Alive?
Well, judging by what I've seen of the reception of this movie, I'm going to be in a bit of a minority here in saying that I didn't really like #Alive.
Oh.
I mean, there was parts of it that I liked the kind of beginning of it, and it's very much leaning into this kind of allegory on kind of the like millennials kind of or maybe modern society's reliance on technology and the kind of almost lack of responsibility for these millennials, and just how lost they are without their modern day conveniences, because the protagonist in this is kind of useless when it comes to surviving the zombie apocalypse, although he does survive it somehow.
Yeah.
But he, from the very start, he's made things more difficult for himself by just being lazy.
Yeah.
And instead of getting the groceries, like his mum had left him a note saying to get groceries, he just sat and gamed all day until this outbreak made it impossible for him to get food. But I just, for me, after the kind of initial part of it, and that was all good, that was all like, I could see what they were doing with it. There's a neighbour who comes in, tries to attack him. After all this, it just kind of, the protagonist to me anyway, and this is going to be different for everyone, but he just annoyed me because he made so many stupid decisions, and it just wasn't believable. And there's a lot of almost very jarring tonal shifts, which didn't really help it. You know, one moment it's like it's really heavily leaning into this serious like zombie disaster thing, and then the next it's quite lighthearted comedy zombie rom-com thing. And the third act I thought was terrible. I thought it was
Wow.
Yeah, there's a Deus Ex Machina that just annoys me. There's a load of like there's a character that he like starts communicating with kind of during the second act, and once she jumps down, at some point she jumps down onto the street to get to the same building he's at, and there's so many inconsistencies with this that it just really irked me. Like that third act, to me, I thought it was going to be a dream sequence or something like that, because it just felt like it was divorced from the entire rest of the movie. But I'm probably going to be on my own with this one.
I think you might be, because I really, really like this film a lot. I understand what you're saying about, like, I do really like, again, like you were saying, like the setup that he's useless.
Yeah.
You know,
he's
he's rubbish, and he is ill prepared for life in general. It seems like this guy is just sort of setting himself up for failure in general. Jun Woo, is his name, and yeah, so he has no food because he didn't bother going shopping like his ma told him to.
Yeah.
He is sort of, doesn't really seem like he's that able to look after himself.
No.
He can cook. That's about it. I think that's all. He can cook and he can play video games. I think, well, he's
kind of make noodles and stuff like that. And
yeah, he can make lazy people food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, he seems to like very much live his life on the internet. And in fact, this film, the first thing I thought when I was watching this film was that, and I don't know if the people who made this film have cited it as an influence, but it seems like it's directly pulled from, there is a part of the book World War Z, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Not the film, but the book, the book of World War Z. There is a section in that about a Japanese kid who lives on like the 19th floor of an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Who sits all day and plays video games, and it just spends all his time doing that, and doesn't realize that the zombie apocalypse has happened until his internet goes out, and then he suddenly realizes that his parents haven't been home for 2 days and all this stuff, and he's really weak and he can't look after himself, and he's relating his story in the past tense to Max Brooks, the writer of the book, as if it's like something that had happened to him before and how he got by. And it's very much like a lot of the stuff from this movie seems to be directly drawn from that.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite parts of that book, World War Z, was the story about this guy trying to sort of adjust himself to having to actually do things, and being like trying to climb down the side of a building when he has zero upper body strength because he just sits all day at his computer.
Yeah.
And it felt like that was very much where this film was coming from. I really like the character of Yu Bin, who is the woman that lives across the way from him.
Yeah, she's definitely a lot more likable than he is. She's
way more
capable.
together. She's way more together than he is. She also seems to have all this like survivalist equipment.
Yeah.
She's got climbing gear and tents. She's the kind of person who goes on like adventure holidays and stuff like that, or goes rock climbing and stuff. So she's terrified of heights, but she goes rock climbing.
Yeah, it's
they bring that up at some point.
Maybe it's that like face your fears type thing.
Yeah. And in fact, there's a point in this movie that made me really nervous. It's actually the point that if you look at any promotional material for it, it's the picture that they use is him trying to get signal on his phone with his phone on the end of a selfie stick, hanging off the side of the building, trying to like raise it up.
Yeah.
And that made me feel really nervous seeing that kind of stuff. I really liked all that kind of stuff.
It has its moments. I just thought it to me anyway, it never really kind of progressed his character at all. There wasn't much character development for the main character. And in actual fact, there's a French movie called The Night Eats the World that was made in 2000. It was made in 2018, and it's kind of a similar premise in that there's a guy. It's not so much kind of an allegory on the technology side. It's more just the loneliness, and it focuses more on this guy being absolutely alone and trying to survive. He ends up like there's a zombie trapped in the elevator that he kind of talks to and like befriends in a way, because he can't get the zombie can't get at him. But in that movie, it's kind of his slow descent into madness almost. But by no means is it a perfect movie either. It has its issues, but I thought it handled this kind of lone survivor idea a bit better than this, because there was a well done scene in #Alive that didn't hit me because I didn't care about this character, where he kind of imagines his family returning and it's all very normal, and he has a prolonged hug with the mum. And I can imagine if you identified with this character, this all worked for you, then it would hit you. But I was just kind of sitting there going, right, get on with it. maybe I'm just really soulless or something.
Maybe you're just soulless and cynical. No, I did not have any kind of like mental breakdown or anything during that scene. I'll say that I wasn't like I did hear
buckets
myself
of
go,
tears.
Yeah, well, no, I did just hear myself go, "Aw." There was something really nice about the smile on his face when he was hugging his mum. They were like, "Oh, that is actually kind of sweet." And I also was a bit. There is a point where he does manage to get signal, and he's listening to the message. He gets all of his text messages and WhatsApp messages and all of his sort of answering machine like recorded messages all arrive at once, and he starts listening to it, and he hears his dad has called him, and his mom's on the other end of the phone too. You can hear her, and you hear them, and he's really happy to hear from them, and then he hears them die. And it's like that kind of got me a bit. But my favorite part of this movie, weirdly, which was the part that you seem to like the least, was like the last 15-20 minutes of this film. I loved, in that if that was just a short film on its own, I think I would have loved it.
Yeah.
Where they end up in an apartment with a guy.
See, to me, there's just so much of that they kind of flip flop as to whether the zombies, like what kind of a threat the zombies are, because the girl gets drugged, tied up, left in the room with the zombie. He's let go of the rope, so the zombie has free. Oh, sorry. The zombie has free movement, and she should be kind of getting sleepy. I mean, her friend was literally drugged at the same time. He had a stronger dosage, fair enough, but he like conked out almost straight away. And she manages to fend this thing off for long enough, while our hero doesn't just shoot the guy and saves her. He like puts the gun down, and it just annoyed me. It was just
he drops it in a panic as he's running to like grab the rope. But yeah, I was thinking the whole time in that scene, I was like, just shoot him. But the thing about that bit that I liked is the point where they realize it's not his flat.
Oh yes, yeah.
He doesn't live there.
Yeah, and it's the photo, and then at that stage they've already made the mistake of trusting him. Yeah,
they've already unwittingly been drugged. They just don't know it yet. But the part in this time, because I saw this film once before, and I was really looking this time because I wanted to check something. Ooh. And the part that I found most interesting about it, that put a whole extra sinister spin on that guy, was I looked at the photo. So that whenever she first clocks all this baby stuff, there's baby bottles and stuff to heat a baby bottle and all this stuff, and she asks the guy, do you have children? And he says no.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, and then she's like, oh, and then she starts, and then she looks at the family photo, and it's not him in the picture. It's a couple and a little child.
Yeah.
The thing that got me this time was I made sure to look at the woman in the photo, and I couldn't necessarily tell because of all the zombie makeup, but it feels like to me that was the woman that was the zombie in the room that he was calling his wife.
Yeah, and so it might not even be.
That's like that he's just a scary creep. And that added this whole extra aspect to him and what was going on, what had been happening in this flat before, that I thought was really, that made me like even more creeped out by him.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I don't like the end of this movie. I think the end is incredibly Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
It's almost up there with Jurassic Park and the friggin' T-Rex coming through the wall at the right moment and saving them.
Even before that, there's the moment where the main character's stopping the horde of zombies coming up the stairs with
a
bicycle. Even that was a bit like, I thought they were going to overrun him. He was going to sacrifice himself to let her go, but no, it's like that bike was enough. It just looks,
throw the bike, to me it looked
really
stairs.
Awkward, and it just looked really like,
don't worry, these zombies will just bumble all over it and it'll be fine. Yeah,
you know, the sheer force of them, because it already showed you them kind of like, you know, knocking doors in, because the absolute magnitude of just that amount of people pushing. But even before that, actually, the electricity was off at this point. At the point where the girl jumps down onto the street, manages to run through all these zombies. Everyone else gets killed, but she's got the plot armor at this point. And then they go down.
Very good use of the phrase plot armor there.
So she's got the plot armor. They get into the lift, and the lift works.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on? And I actually thought there's, not to put a spoiler on the night that the night eats the world, but there's kind of almost like a similar thing happens in that, and it you know, you could maybe say it's cheap in that sense, that it turns out that it's him dreaming or hallucinating, and I thought that was better, you know, because at the time I'm going, what, that's ridiculous, and then it's like once it's snapped and you kind of see him just standing there staring at something, I was going, oh right, yeah, he's going mental.
Yeah, this is somebody who's lost their grip.
Yeah. Like the characters in #Alive, well, mainly the main character. She was actually pretty good, but I just thought their reactions were either over the top, like he's really desperately, but then the next scene he'd be, cheery. Like even he goes to hang himself, which is as dark as you can get, and then she's got the laser pointer to kind of show that someone else is alive, and he manages to get the noose off his neck, and then he's all like giddy and acting like a love-struck teen, for want of a better word. And it was just for that to come straight after someone trying to hang themselves was, again, just for me, just that tonal shift that was like, and if it was done right, maybe it could work, but in this it was just like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of I couldn't find any definite source, but this might be something to do with the makers of the film trying to like squash any bad reviews on this. But apparently it didn't review well in Korea because of the sheer magnitude of adverts in it.
Is there a lot of product placement that we didn't notice?
Well, I noticed the Nutella one because I was like,
that's all over.
What the fuck? They've been talking about Nutella for about 5 minutes here. And but apparently there's quite a lot every because he watches it quite early on before the electricity goes off. He watches quite a lot of TV to catch up on what's going on, and there's usually an ad in that, and then I think the noodles that he has for his like last meal that he's got the wee label on it. I think that's
Last Supper is on it. Yeah,
it's something that I didn't really notice at the time, but that one's like very prominently. They keep showing the packaging of it, and I don't know. To me, it just kind of like, product placement, it's a thing that's going to happen in a lot of movies. If it's done subtly, fine. These products exist and they're going to sneak into these movies. But to me, that was just a wee bit like the Nutella thing really caused the alarm bells to ring in my head.
They have a proper like close up of it when he finds the Nutella. And then
they're talking about how delicious it is and like
how great it is. Yeah.
She's like, "Oh no, it's fine. I don't want Nutella." And he's like, "Well, why did I give you it? That's so delicious. I really want Nutella." Yeah,
he's annoyed because he could have had the Nutella instead. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think of that as product placement at the time, but now that you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, it probably was. And it's not as egregious as something like, say, that iRobot movie that had Will Smith in it. That one, that is one of the worst cases of product placement I think I've ever seen, where he literally talks about his Converse sneakers constantly.
I mean, this was close. That Nutella thing is quite on the nose,
but I mean,
it could have been anything that he sent to her, but it was
not as bad as iRobot though. Yeah, it's got like a FedEx delivery robot. There's literally a scene where they show you a street and it's just corporate logos everywhere, and like throughout the entire runtime of the movie, like he gets his shoes delivered. And then they make a point of saying they're circa 2005 because he's talking about them like the classics, but they want you to know that they're the new ones. So they say exactly the year they're from, which is the year the movie came out. And then he keeps putting his feet up the desk, up on desks, and pointing at them and talking about his shoes. And people keep looking at his shoes and saying, "Hey, nice sneakers." Yeah. So it's not quite as bad as iRobot. No, but now that you're making me think about it now, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
But and like that was the problem because I really did enjoy the opening moments of this movie, because I know I'm going being quite negative about it, but like even like a lot of the exposition that is given on the TV kind of makes more sense because it's all news reports and things like that. The whole thing when the neighbor guy comes in looking help, and our protagonist is just like, no, fuck off, get out of here.
Aye.
And like having to deal with him and then his change and the wee moments that really tie in with the whole, my perceived allegory with the technology and kind of social media and stuff, because like even when he's asking for help on all these different like social medias that he's on, he always like adds and don't forget to subscribe and things like that.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I feel like the movie's not necessarily critical of social media and stuff. It's a little bit like, this guy got distracted by it, but ultimately there's a point towards the end of the movie where they sort of address it. The reason a lot of people have been getting rescued is because of social media, and because they were like, here I am, able to let people know this is where I am and I need help.
I don't think it's demonizing social media at all. I think it's demonizing or not so much demonizing. It is calling out those kind of, like, I mean, I just said millennials earlier, but it's anyone who really kind of just focuses on, say, like gaming and social media, and that's their life, and don't go out much and kind of, have that almost hermetic existence. That without their technology, they will struggle. Yeah,
it definitely works against him.
Yeah.
Especially in the early goings where he's just like, oh, I'm screwed now because I don't know how to look after myself, and I did not prepare, and I don't have any food in the house, and I was relying on my parents, it seems,
and
to
I really appreciate
for me.
I really appreciate the scene where he needs headphones. Or specifically a headphone jack, and all of his are wireless, so they're all useless.
Yeah, that was really funny. I thought that was really, really funny when it was happening, but I was also just kind of like, you know what? A lot of people would probably be in that scenario. I'm not.
No.
I own wireless.
Because we're old men, we love our wires.
Yeah, we're old men, so we like to... I always have a backup. If I have anything that's wireless, I have some analog version of it somewhere just in case. Like when I leave the house with my wireless headphones, I always, somewhere on my person, have actual wired headphones somewhere.
That sounds like some wrapped up in a bag. Sickness.
What?
It sounds like some kind of mental sickness.
Maybe. But you know what? It's actually done me in good stead. It has, and like... If I ever need wired headphones as a radio antenna, I'm sweet. I got loads. I even got ones that don't really work, but would work for the purposes that he needs them. One ear doesn't work in it or whatever, But so I was watching that thinking, oh, I bet that would be. But I was I folded my arms and was a little smug then to myself thinking, oh, well, I've got plenty of them. And then, that really the thing I should probably be thinking about that is, I need to stop hoarding all these broken earphones. But hey,
No, you get saved straight away.
Yeah,
but
because of my headphones.
I do think he underutilized the drone that he has as well.
Yeah, I would have used that nearly as effectively as he should have.
He was. I mean, it kind of, to be honest, at the time, because that's quite early on. It was really the later stages that annoyed me. It seems, but like. At the time, as it kind of worked with his character in a sense that he was too scared to really leave the house and go search in the other apartments. But I mean, I would like to think if I was in that situation, I would use the drone to kind of scope out, because there's always like a window in the balcony, or like kind of your screen door, so you could kind of roughly check see if there's any movement, and then you could kind of work your way in.
Yeah, he could have used it way more practically than he does. But the parts where he does go outside the flat were actually some of my favourite moments.
Yeah.
In fact, the climax of that first act, before he discovers that he's not alone, where it's actually the point where he realizes for sure that his parents are dead.
Yeah.
And he loses it. And he just goes out into the hallway and just starts trying to kill things.
Yeah.
I really liked that. Thanks in no small part to the fact that it was really well shot. There was something really nice about the way all of the shots are composed whenever he's outside. There was something that almost looked like panels in a comic book at times. The way like the like comic books that I've read, where I'm like, that's framed like an image I recognize, maybe from like the Walking Dead comic book or something. There was just something about like you get like a horde of zombies, and then you have like this really high contrast of the way the blood is across the walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was something about the look of that I just thought was really cool. I just thought that stuff looked really nice. All the sort of in corridor shots, I think, were really, really well done, because they felt claustrophobic when they needed to. but also it gave it. Sometimes it had a really open feel. Like he had a lot of places to go and run around, and like places to hide. And I don't know. I just think that whenever they were doing stuff like that, I enjoyed it most. Yeah. Whenever he was out roaming the halls and looking for stuff, and
yeah, because I can kind of see where they were going with like having him just trapped in that one room. But yeah, like I think they did miss an opportunity of just making him even slightly that tiny wee bit more capable, you know, of at least trying. He just maybe that's what annoyed me about him the most. He just didn't try. He just
didn't try.
Literally, he was so passive that it just really got to me. But because even for me, when he goes out in that rage, it didn't make sense then, because he goes out in a rage and he hits a few of them, and then he's like saying, what do you want or something, and like, or no, one of them comes over and like he's like shouting at her, what do you want, and that chases him back in. Like
it's the guy that had come into his apartment earlier at the beginning. It's him, and he's all messed up. He can't walk. He's like crawling across the floor.
Yeah,
and he's shouting down at him about it. Yeah, and I think they're trying to just communicate there that they don't have anything that they want.
No,
that they just want to eat people. But I mean, we know that about zombies anyway. That's not.
And I mean, he knows that anyway. You know, he watched the carnage at the start. He's seen the again, you know, good beginning where you've got the mum embraces her daughter, and then the daughter like turns in her arms and eats her, and he's watching this all. Like he's not a complete fish out of water here. He's not completely blind to what's been going on. I don't know. It just, to me, that they made him stupid to advance the plot when it did. You know, at times when I didn't think it, you know, they made him extra stupid. Sorry, you know, to advance the plot, because as the girl keeps reminding us near enough every sentence, he's really dumb.
He is, yeah. She calls him dumb a lot. I think that's one of the things I like about her, is that she doesn't mince her words or hold back.
No.
She's a great character. I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed her, and even when they meet the only other living person in the movie, creepy guy, she's the one who's more sensible and more guarded towards him and doesn't drink instantly. Like he sets the drinks down and she's like, no, hold on, and then he manages to fool her anyway. But
she sees him drink it, and then that's apparently fine. But you know, it's she's a great character. I take your point. I think you're right. I don't think anything you've said is incorrect. I think you're correct.
It's the suspension of disbelief thing, you know, and everyone's different to what kind of they will accept, really, you know. To me mainly, as I said earlier when we were talking about Wreck, I think for me the most important thing is kind of character development, and another Korean zombie movie, Train to Busan, I think does a lot, does a better job of, you know, the protagonist in that is really hateful. Actually, he's very selfish, and he's one of these kind of like big business guys. You know, he's rich, walking. You can tell that he's walked over all the so many people to get him where he is, and through the course of that movie, he does change believably as well, and all the side characters are so well done, and interesting to watch. But I think #alive for me anyway, again, I think it's so much of it depends on how you connect or don't connect with the central character in this.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like they had you sort of initially, and then they lost you, and then they failed to get you back.
Yeah,
it sounds like. Yeah, whereas I was happy to go along with him being a bumbling idiot who's just sort of getting by, but not really getting by very well, and then has to rely on a capable woman to come in and help him out, which seems like he's been doing all his life up to this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, overall, I think I did genuinely enjoy this film, though. I think it was pretty good. But again, that ending did kind of rub me the wrong way.
I think no matter what,
with that kind of ending in anything,
I think if you even if I enjoyed the entire rest of it, that ending would have annoyed me.
That would have put you right back.
Yeah, it wouldn't have put me right back, but it is. Yeah, as we said, it's a very, very annoying Deus Ex Machina where they even look down for the helicopter.
And it's not there, yeah.
And the zombies it's all kind of done in slow motion, isn't it? So you can't tell the actual time frame, but you're thinking,
yeah,
it would take for a helicopter to like fly up. You know, these zombies are running full speed.
Yeah.
That roof's not that big. It's like, it's one of the, again, maybe to other people a minor wee kind of nitpick, but I think for me anyway, I was already kind of
too much.
checked out. I was already checked out at this point.
Yeah. You were done giving them the benefit of the doubt already. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so the Argentinian chimichurri stand has gone up in flames, and it's very quickly spreading over to the French waffles. You can smell it. It's actually creating quite a nice smell on the breeze, but the fire is moving this way. So we're going to move on to our third film now, of Japanese origin. So it is it Shin'ichirô Ueda's One Cut of the Dead. It's a bit of an odd one, this one. But John, what did you think of One Cut of the Dead?
I'm kind of confused over whether I like this movie or not. It's one of those kind of like I think I need to watch it again. I definitely had fun with parts of it, but at this point I will say that no matter if you do enjoy it or not, if you haven't seen it and you're even mildly curious, you need to watch it now, and because I think more so than most films, because it's not really, it's got an odd kind of narrative structure.
Very odd. Yes.
You don't want any spoilers at all. I went into this completely blind, and it might have helped.
It's hard to talk about it without spoiling what is so interesting about it.
And I mean,
and what makes it good.
It's from 2017, but at the same time, like, I would hate to, it's one of those ones that I would hate to spoil it on anyone. It's not like the Sixth Sense where everyone knows. You know, the spoiler.
Everybody knew. Everybody coming out of the cinema immediately told everybody they knew exactly what the twist was at the end of that fucking movie. So I think we're probably going to get right into spoiling this. I think.
Yeah. We kind of have to, because
that's what I want to talk about. That's the most important thing about the film to me.
I mean, this is essentially 3 movies in one. The 3 separate movies. In this, it's very odd.
And I'm going to say that I absolutely loved this film.
Yeah.
I think by the time I got to the end, I loved this film.
Yeah.
Initially, I was confused by it.
Yes.
I was like,
I think the first 40 minutes are just pure confusion.
Yeah. It does a great job of absolutely justifying everything that happens retroactively later. But it was just so like, because, you go in and you start watching it and the whole premise is like, oh, this is just going to be one long cut.
Yeah.
This is going to be literally a single take zombie movie.
And it's the most, we've seen a lot of B movies and a lot of terrible horror movies that
we have.
That kind of like 40-minute, like we'll just go for like the best way to put it is the first act, which is the movie that they're making.
Yeah,
that kind of you don't really know how to take it, because this could just be for a while I thought this is the entire movie, it's going to be like this, and all these like weird awkward scenes that don't make any sense are never going to be explained. They're just going to be there, and you're just going to be constantly going, what was that about? Like,
I even had a point where my fiance who I was watching it with said to me, is that it? Is it over? That wasn't very long. And it was literally, I think it is about 40 minutes in that you get a credit roll.
Yep. like
and you're like,
properly long one too.
Yeah, like it goes on for the full length of a credit roll, and then the screen fades to black.
Yeah.
And then I will confess at that point, because the screen fades to black for a little bit too long, the point where I was like, what? So I went and flicked like down to see, and there was still like a huge chunk of film left, and I was like, no, okay, something odd's about to happen here. And then all of a sudden you see the guy that you've seen in the film already, who's a director in this movie.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's there being spoken to by someone off camera, and the whole the film stock is completely different, and the quality of the picture is completely different. You're no longer handycam. It's like, oh wait, this is like a professional movie now. What's going on? And
and I'd say for me that middle part where it just after the credits roll for the movie within this movie, I felt it was very slow, and it took me a while to kind of get back into it.
Yeah.
And then like by the third act I was enjoying myself again. The third act's very chaotic and
it's brilliant
and funny, and just like I was laughing out loud.
Yes, absolutely. I was laughing my goddamn leg off.
LOLing for real.
Indeed. For like the last like 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, I was having a goddamn ball with everything that was happening. I was like, because they basically used the last chunk of the movie to explain everything that happened in the first chunk of the movie, and you're like, oh,
and it's almost like it not quite slapstick, but it's
some of
it's
it is
almost
very
borderline.
slapstick.
It's so ridiculous so quickly.
Yeah,
and it's just this guy trying to keep everything together.
Everything is literally falling to pieces around him at times, and he is holding things together. And I think the thing that I liked about this movie, and I think the middle third is the slowest part of the film.
Yeah,
and
it's necessary, but
absolutely, yeah.
Which is why, again, that's why I think I need to revisit it, because it was such a shock to the system after this awful this one cut B movie thing.
A terrible film. It is a bad film. It's really, really, really cool that it is all one take.
Oh yeah,
that is really cool. And it becomes
apparently
more
it took
impressive.
them 4 attempts to do.
Yeah, I bet it did
in reality, and that's it's so weird as well. Like, see, even when you're talking about this, because it's a movie within a movie within a movie.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
is it
during
the
actual credits of the film? You during the credits of the film, they show you footage of them filming the movie. And my head was turning inside out at that point. I was like, what the hell? Like, that was the point where I was just like, I was literally applauding in my living room. I was clapping as the credits were rolling, because that was happening, and we were like 3 layers deep, and it was so beautifully stupid that I loved it. Yeah. So the middle third is like, it's slow, but it establishes the real characters really well, to the point where then when you get to the last chunk of the film, everything's way more meaningful when that's happening. Ultimately, I think this is a film about a guy, and we've talked about this before in this show, specifically in reference to Paul W.S. Anderson, of a director who shows up and he's there to do a job, and he does it competently. In fact, I believe the quote in this movie that Higurashi, the director who's been hired in this movie, says about himself: "I'm fast, I'm cheap, and I'm average." That's his pitch whenever he's looking for work. That's what he says to the company. He's like, "I'm fast and I'm cheap and I'm average." Like, you won't be disappointed. You won't be amazed by me, but you won't be disappointed.
You
will get what you pay for. Yeah, I'll get the job done. And
which is exactly what they're looking for. Like, I love the shots of the... it's like the studio executives, for want of a better term for them. They're kind of watching. They're half watching this. They're all kind of like distracted with their phones and like occasionally looking up, and all these like happenstances, or all these like, things that he's trying to think on his feet while things are falling apart, and like, oh no, the extra who plays the zombies completely blind drunk, so he's propping him up and stuff.
Yeah, because you're watching the first part of the film and you're seeing him move around in these weird ways, and you're like, that's really stupid. And at that point you're like, that's ridiculous, what's going on there? And then you got the other guys doing he's got his arms and legs up and he's dancing around almost like he's acting like an idiot, but all that makes sense Because you see the last third of the film and you're like, oh, that's why he was acting like that, and that's why this happened, and that's why there's weird stilted moments during the film at the beginning where you're like, why is everybody standing and looking around them like that and being weird? And then it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable when you're watching it, because you're like, I feel like this is all falling apart. And then you watch the last part of the film, you go, oh, it was all falling apart?
Yeah.
That's why I felt like that, because I was supposed to feel like that, because it was really weird. And you remember the reason they do that. I mean, you remember those moments. Yeah. You remember feeling weird about them doing that. And then when you see it explained...
the bits that stand out most in that first, in the actual one-cut movie, are the bits that it's just them standing there staring at something. You can tell they're waiting for their cue, or they're reading something off camera, and you're like, why the fuck is this here? But I love the studio executives, the way they're kind of watching this going, sometimes going, oh, that's a strange decision, but okay. Or they're going, oh, that's brilliant. So something just happens to work out well for them. And they're like, oh, what a brilliant decision he made there to focus on that. And you're like,
it's like, no, he was just doing that because he needed to vamp while he got something ready over here, or was panicking trying to fix something.
And like, he's always running out going, action. And even his interactions with because at this state, like by the third act, the actor and the actress that he's dealing with, and their characters and the issues he's had with them. Yeah. And he gets to vent.
He's improvising lines because he wasn't supposed to be in the film, but now he is, and he's literally screaming the things he thinks of them in their faces while it's running, and they can't do anything about it because the premise is that the film is going out live. It's a live broadcast, and it's one take, and they have to get it right. And they're just like, so they can't like defend themselves or ask for a cut, because it's just like, no, this is it. We're on now. You're on TV. We just have to get through this. Yep. And he's literally got that guy, and he's like, you were like this during rehearsal, and he's roaring in his face. Like, that's beautiful. But for me, this film is like, the middle part of this film is almost the most important part of the film.
It is, which again is why I want to go back and maybe watch it again now that I know what happens. Yeah,
because it makes the end so much more meaningful. And I will admit, I teared up right at the end of this movie. This movie really punched me in my heart right at the end, really hard. Just the final thing that happens, I was like, oh, that is so sweet and touching, without being saccharine. It wasn't labored. It slowly got there, and then the final just little exchange between him and his daughter, I was like, oh, that really hit me hard. So
it does a really good job, making their relationship seem real as well. She's almost disappointed in her dad because as you said, because he openly admits that he is just this kind of jobbing director.
He shows up and he does, that's his job. He sees it as his job, which it absolutely is. I mean, a lot of directors, it is their job, but he's like, there's this phrase that keeps getting repeated of, it's not art, it's TV.
Yeah.
And there's a point where, and his daughter is loves film almost too much, to the point where she gets fired from a job working on a movie because she's trying to get this 6-year-old girl to be a method actor. She's trying to get this kid, no, you don't need eye drops to cry. Can you not just actually cry? And is trying to encourage the child to cry. And everybody else on set's like, stop doing that. And she won't stop, and she gets fired. And because she's like, she wants everyone to be Robert De Niro, and she wants to be Martin Scorsese. She loves that. She's walking around with a Scarface t-shirt on for most of the film as well. That's just hammering home that she likes character-driven film. And
also, she's the one, the rest of the behind-the-scenes crew are very ready just to give up on it.
They want to stop.
She's the one who kind of sees that her dad is trying to kind of trying to make this work no matter what, and she's the one that jumps in and kind of rallies the troops, and it is quite sweet in that way. But again, as you say, avoids being saccharine and avoids it seeming almost unreal. Yeah, and it makes sense that she has experience in filmmaking, so It's not like she's just completely random daughter who,
Yeah.
because her dad's a director, she can direct.
Yeah, no, she is actively trying to follow in her dad's footsteps, but she also has this passion about films that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
But I feel like the heart of the film is that he finds that in himself in the middle of this making this live movie. He becomes someone who starts to care, because that you get that point where the producer is shouting at him, it's not art, it's TV, and you can see that he suddenly decided, no, this is art. There's a moment where he's like, no, this is art, and it's going, because that guy's even trying to get him to stop.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, this is art, and I have to do this because my daughter believes in me, and my daughter wants this to work. And I think it's the whole film is it's this weird, really clever love letter to independent filmmaking and the people who make scrappy little cheap little projects with that they love. People who love film, who have
passion
no money.
Projects and it's got a lot of heart to it.
It's all heart. It's 100% just that's what this movie is all about, and it's there's something just really sweet about it, and that the way they're getting on and the things that are happening and the way they're having to fix things, you get the feeling that the people who made the film, the real filmmakers, probably experienced a lot of things like this when they were trying to make films when they were students, and later, and like, oh no, this broke and we need to get this done today, so we have to improvise. But that's the whole film that they're doing is, oh no, we have to improvise this entire thing because everything broke. Like, the way they achieved the crane shot at the end is brilliant. I love how they bodge that together, and he's got and all the characters are wonderful too. Like, his daughter's great, his wife is brilliant.
Brilliant.
She might be my favorite character, and
she's the one that stands out the most in the movie that they're making. When you first watch it, her performance really stands out. And then she's even better when it goes throughout behind the scenes thing. Where
she's the De Niro, she's the method actor.
She gets lost in her character so much. That
the daughter wants. Yeah, she doesn't. Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like she doesn't want to act anymore, and neither does her husband, the director. Yeah, because she is that method actor, because she gets so deep in her characters that it becomes a problem.
Yep.
And there's this and you see it happen during the film where you're just like, she's not supposed to be doing the things that she's doing, and then you look back at whenever you were seeing the film the first time, and all of a sudden all of that stuff makes sense, and why everybody around her is behaving the way they are, because she is being unpredictable. There's a point where she's supposed to be dead, and she just stands up and screams.
That's right.
And you're like, when you're initially watching the film and you see that, at the beginning, you're like, what the hell was that? But then you see them making it later, and he's literally on the ground dragging her back down and holding her there because she's not supposed to be doing that.
There's so many. It works very well, and you kind of almost. I don't think we'll have much more to say about this movie, to be honest, because so much of it is just kind of, you see that first 40 minutes. And then the rest of the film is explaining why that happened. So you're essentially at some point seeing the same scenes twice, only from a different perspective. Yeah, and a more interesting and hilarious perspective.
It's a perfect example of what was wrong with the way John Carpenter made Ghosts of Mars, because
John Carpenter.
There's chunks of that movie where he shows stuff from different perspectives, but
maybe
it's exactly
he should release
the
behind the scenes.
Yeah,
much better. John Carpenter running about pulling extras down.
Yeah, maybe. But because in Ghosts of Mars, we discussed this when we talk about Ghosts of Mars, but you see stuff from other characters' perspectives, and you don't learn anything new from that perspective. It's just the same thing from a different angle. Whereas
this movie without the third act, it would be kind of like a funny wee oddity, maybe, but it would lose everything that makes it stand out. Yeah, which is, seeing just what you're saying there, seeing this different perspective puts everything you've seen before into a completely new light, and makes you care about things that you didn't. And like, there's times I was starting like, oh, what am I watching? Like, kind of trailing off almost, and then you kind of see it later, and you're like, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, sort of like when #Alive lost you and never got you back. This film almost lost you, and then it grabbed you really hard and pulled you back in.
Yeah.
Because I think that's this movie's that's the best thing about this film is the way that it sets all this stuff up and then completely justifies everything it showed you before.
Yeah,
just everything. There's just like, I don't think it puts a foot wrong. It feels like it's constantly putting its feet wrong until you get to the third act and you suddenly realize, oh no, this is actually expertly done.
Yeah.
And then there was a whole thing like during the actual credits of the real film, then you get this sort of extra perspective of obviously other behind the scenes footage of them filming the film.
Yeah.
It's like pickling your brain. And you're like, this is amazing. This is wonderful. And yeah, I think I love this film. I halfway through I was like, I don't know, maybe this is overrated. And then I got to the end and I was like, no, this is as far as I'm concerned, this is a classic.
Yeah.
And whether or not it counts as, I mean, it does count as a zombie movie, but it also doesn't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's about a zombie movie. It's a movie about a zombie movie rather than being a zombie movie.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, for me, it was the first half is just odd. It's or sorry, not the first half. The first act is just odd. The second act kind of ground to a halt for me. It was a wee bit too slow for my liking, and then the third act kind of redeemed that. The third act really kind of made the rest of the whole experience make sense. And yeah, I will watch it again probably very soon to kind of almost experience the uncut version, that 40 minutes at the start, knowing what's going on.
I think you're right. I think on a subsequent watch you might actually appreciate this film way more.
I mean, especially because that middle, as you mentioned, that middle section is the most important, and it gets you, because that's it's going through the director, his character mainly, because he is the main character in it essentially. And his wife and daughter and all these people involved to some extent, and without that, the third act would fall flat anyway. So no, it's very, very good.
Yeah, this film gets a huge thumbs up from me. This film is great. Right, well, I think we're coming to an end here. This has probably been the most successful one of these food festivals that we've had, ironically enough. This has been the least amount of carnage, but we still do need to figure a way out of here. The fire has spread to the edge of our sort of upturned bar, and a few of the vodka bottles are starting to get bubbly and maybe ready to ignite. So we got to figure out how to get out of here. But first of all, before we do any of that, we got to figure out which one of these three films we liked the most. Which is the best,
we're no
best
rush.
film? No, we're no rush. I mean, fire is slow as far as I can tell. You know, it creeps. That's what they say, isn't it? So, John, what do you think was the best one of these films? What's your favorite?
That's quite difficult. I mean, it's either going to be, for me, it's either going to be Wreck or One Cut of the Dead. I think Wreck might just win the top spot for me. I want to watch One Cut of the Dead again to really kind of now that I kind of know that's the twist. Let's say, but Wreck, I do think it's one of the best, if not the best, found footage movies, and I think the atmosphere in it is done perfectly, and so I think I'll pick Wreck.
Okay, cool. I might be with you on this. I do really like I really like #Alive a lot more than you did, it seems. But like it's a very good film. I liked from a technical standpoint, I liked how it was made. There was something I liked about the look of the film, I think. And I did find it, like, at turns funny, and, you know, and I did like a lot of the gore effects actually were quite nice, a little cartoonish here and there, but I kind of like that about it, I think. So I did really like that. Between Wreck and One Cut of the Dead, probably for me, is how I'm stuck to.
Yeah.
I think I really like One Cut of the Dead because it is sort of, it is sort of about the love of. It's about the love of film. It's about
it's very meta, which makes it more makes it much more of a difficult decision because you've got Wreck, which is
cleverer.
Yeah,
it's more clever. One Cut of the Dead is more clever, but Wreck is so visceral and intense, and in the genre of found footage, it sits right at the top.
Yeah,
for me, it's definitely the best one of those. There's just something so. There was just something so sweet and wonderful about One Cut of the Dead, which, you know, going into watching these zombies movies, I didn't think that would be the clincher for me.
Yeah.
Would be an emotional punch. But I think I gotta go with One Cut of the Dead. Maybe I love Wreck. I love Wreck. I love the way they couch the whole thing. Like, again, this is sort of two different films that, when you see the end of each of them, it almost does change your perspective on the rest of the film.
Yeah.
They both have that going for them. But I think there was just something about the end of One Cut of the Dead that just really did it for me. This just the very final shot in that movie just really got me. It really hit me hard.
Again, as we've said, it's very sweet and very emotional without that saccharine nonsense, without really hammering you over the head with it.
Yeah. It's not Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which works in its favor heavily. It's not schmaltzy, I believe is the word people would use for, I think, what you're referring to there. It doesn't have Hollywood schmaltz out of it. It feels the emotion in it feels like real emotion.
Yeah.
You know, it's not forced.
Definitely, when you watch the first 40 minutes of that movie, it is very surprising. Like, you do not think you're going to have actual characters in that movie.
Yeah.
A lot of this does come as a surprise by the end of it. You're like, I really care about that director, and that I wanted him to succeed and make this good movie. And
it's a film that constantly surprises you with how you feel about it, I think.
Yeah.
You're like, I wasn't expecting this, and I wasn't expecting to feel this way, and then later you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting it to be this, and I wasn't expecting to feel like this, and then by the end of it, I was like, I didn't expect to feel anything like I feel right now when I got to the end of that film, and I thought it was wonderful. So that's my pick. So that goes in the vault in my heart, and you can put Wreck in your little vault in your heart to keep.
Yeah.
But which one of these films helps us best deal with the scenario that we're in now, though?
Now, this is one we have to agree on, because
this is important. If we're not together on this, we're gonna die. You know, that's just the way it is.
I mean, One Cut of the Dead. If we go by that logic, then we're just in a movie. And if we just shout cut, maybe they'll just, they'll go eat sandwiches or.
Oh my God, John, you're a genius.
Yeah.
So I never thought of that. Because, like, Wreck would tell us that maybe violence is somewhat violence, or just not being in the building.
Yeah,
but that's too late for us.
I think just not being in the building, which isn't really helpful.
No, and also this is an outdoor. This is an outdoor festival, so we're not even in a building. We're under an upturned tent. It's not really. That doesn't really help. As far as #alive goes. He bumbles and doesn't really do very well.
Which actually, to be fair, might help us, because anything that requires any kind of skill, we're probably going to fail at.
Yeah, we are bumblers. As a that's sort of our raison d'etre, as they say, to be multicultural.
Yeah.
So I think what we do is, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try this now and see what happens. Okay.
Yep.
You ready? Cut. Oh. There you go. Everybody stopped, and they're all just sort of like they're calling lunch. They're all off. They're all off.
Always been in a movie.
Hold on a minute. Let me have a wee look here. Hold on. I'm gonna just. There's a whole film crew over there. Yeah, okay, right. Well, that's on us, I guess.
Wow.
I didn't know what was happening. You know what? But this is good. You know why? Because now we get to go and have... Oh, wait, hold on. No, I was going to say we could go get a French waffle, but the stand did burn down.
Oh, yeah. That was probably all props.
Yeah. Did I eat a styrofoam chicken katsu burger? Is that what's happened here?
Wouldn't be the worst thing you've had.
Well, either way, we've solved the problem, so I think we're all right now. Okay, so if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That's at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. Our email address, if you want to contact us, talk to us, whine at us, whatever, is filmcast at thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast at thisweeksapocalypse.com. So until next time, every Monday we'll be back. So 3, 2, 1, and cut!